Okay everyone, welcome to Fitness for Mountain Bikers question and answer, episode number 2. These questions come from the Fitness for Mountain Bikers Facebook group. Every couple of weeks I put a video out saying please ask me some questions, and people ask and I do my very best to get round to giving them detailed and nuanced answers. If you want to get your question asked and answered, then join the group. And keep your eyes out for next time I put a video up saying ask me some stuff. So question number 1 today comes from Scott. He has got a specific fitness goal in that he wants to ride up Snowdon in January. Now, I had to go and watch a couple of videos to kind of refresh my memory of the Snowdon climb. I have never done this myself, but fortunately there are a bunch of POV videos out there and it certainly looks like a bit of a killer of a climb. You know, some pretty long gradual bits, but also some pretty long, moderately steep sections as well that will need to be dealt with. The real crux of Scott's question is, can he train for this kind of riding even though he lives in a relatively flat part of the country? So he says that a lot of it's like very gently rolling terrain where he lives, and then there are some very short steep climbs, but not ones that can be easily kind of sessioned. It would take a little bit of you out of your way in order to get back to the bottom of the climb again, and I'm guessing he doesn't really fancy riding straight up and then turning around and riding straight back down the climb that he's come up, and I can't say I blame him. Where's the fun in that? And then if there are any climbs, they're kind of more gradual in gradient and a bit longer. He also makes the point that he does ride an e-bike, but he doesn't like to use the higher power settings. Okay, that's absolutely great. So the good news is, yes, you absolutely can train for riding in bigger terrain with the terrain that you've got available to you locally. And so what you have to realize is there are a couple of levels of intensity where you want to pitch most of your riding. And actually the majority of your riding, if you're wanting to build a great big engine that's going to make climbing up long extended hills easier, is actually you want to be riding at this kind of gentle intensity where you are breathing fairly hard and getting quite sweaty, but you're still able to hold a conversation. Something like 65% of your max heart rate. If you were riding with a power meter on your bike, then we would say it's 65% of FTP. If you want to know more about FTP, then I can do that in a future video. Point being, a level of intensity where you can still just about hold a conversation is where like 80% of your riding intensity needs to be. And it sounds like you've got terrain that kind of allows you to do that. However, the flip side is the other 20% of your time spent on a bike each week, if you're wanting to build a great big engine, is going to have to be pretty horrible. So when you are going up those longer, more gradual climbs, you might want to work in some sort of intervals where you're doing like 5 minutes really quite hard, pushing yourself, getting a really big blow on, heart rate is kind of creeping up towards maximum, and then 5 minutes where you like pull it back and you go at kind of a gentle recovery pace at like 60% of max heart rate, and try and build in interval work like that as well. I appreciate it's not easy to do if you're riding with other riders, but it's still a really great way of building a big engine. When you come to those short local climbs, you know, push yourself hard. Definitely try and get your heart rate up to the max and try and sustain a really high rate of power. And then if you look back on your week, let's say you use Strava or something like that, you might be able to tally up roughly how much time you've spent going really, really quite hard in terms of your intensity. Strava will even give you like estimated power output so you can gauge this kind of stuff. And what you'll hopefully see is that you've spent something like 80%, 75% going at fairly sort of steady aerobic intensities where you could still hold a conversation, and then the other 20-25% has been you going like really quite hard. As long as you're able to do that kind of work on the terrain that you've got available to you, then you should be able to make mincemeat of the climb up Snowdon, provided that you are consistent in your training over the coming months. I hope that answers your question, Scott. I should also add, do not forget strength training. Obviously, you know my background, you know what I'm about. I'm always going to say augment your cycling with some sort of strength training. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, you know, lunges with dumbbells, squats with dumbbells, Romanian deadlifts to strengthen your hamstrings and your glutes, okay, core work as well, and some upper body work as well, you know, but push-ups, dumbbell rows, presses, all of these things done with good technique can all make a tremendous difference to how much power you can put out on the bike. And when you get to those really steep grades, you're going to have that extra bit of torque, that extra bit of power output that's going to carry you on up over those chunky bits of the climb. Okay, right. Question 2 comes from Andy. So Andy was asking about leg fatigue, sort of leg pump, so to speak, which you can experience when you're doing really long extended descents and you're trying to hold a kind of decent attack position on the bike, but there's all sorts of chaos going on underneath your wheels, lots of impact to your back wheel and your front wheel, transmitting force into your legs, and you want to kind of fully extend with your legs to take the pain away, but you kind of have to hold this semi-squat position so that you're maintaining a decent attack position on the bike. So what I did is this morning I went into the garage and I filmed something called a Spanish squat, but it's a Spanish squat with a twist. So hopefully I'll be able to edit this in so you can see the Spanish squat demonstration. So what I've got here is I've gone and got a great big resistance band. I have hooked it just round the back of my knees, just above the thickest part of my calves, okay? I've hooked it around something really stable. In my case, I've got something attached to the wall that I can hook resistance bands around. You could use something like a squat rack if you're in the gym, some of the power racks, or if you've got like a banister or a bedpost or something at home, just make sure you loop it around something that's really not going anywhere. Then I'm able to kind of lean back against that resistance band and put a lot of weight on it, and it's going to let me perform a squat but with vertical shins. So then what I do is I'm going to perform a full squat, and this is where I perform this with something called an isodynamic contrast. Okay, so for the purposes of this demonstration here, I am doing this with a little bit of extra weight with a kettlebell, and what I do is I squat down, come back up, and I stop just a few degrees above my thighs being parallel with the ground, something like 30 degrees above parallel, because I think that's a reasonable simulation of the joint angle that we're going to be holding when we're on the bike. Okay, I then hold for a count of 5 seconds. Okay, I then stand up, squat back down again, and then come back up, stopping just above halfway, another count of 5 seconds. Okay, in this particular case, I did 5 lots of 5 seconds and called that a set. Okay, so what you might want to do is you can progress this movement one of 2 ways. You can either add reps, additional lots of 5 seconds, up to, let's say, 10 lots of 5 seconds. You could also make the pauses longer. And so maybe you'll be able to get to 5 lots of 6 seconds, then 5 lots of 7 seconds, 5 lots of 8 seconds. Okay, you could even work up to doing 10 lots of 10 seconds if you were feeling really, really strong in this movement. Okay, there's lots of different ways to progress. However, I'm also a big believer in adding load once you can do this with body weight. So in this particular case, I've gone and got a kettlebell and I've added weight that way. Adding weight will just make you stronger in this position and mean that you're going to be able to weather those impacts coming at your back wheel all the more competently. Okay, so you can hold a dumbbell in a goblet hold or a plate or a kettlebell, anything like that where you want to add load. Okay, so Spanish squat, give this movement a go as a way of conditioning your legs for holding that attack position while you're riding. The other thing I want you to think about is, are you holding your body in a hinge, or are you kind of squatting on the bike when you're riding? So have you got a slightly flat back? Are you pushing your hips back a little bit and keeping your chest kind of lower over the top tube and holding your arms in an attack position? Because this is a stronger position for your torso and hips to be in, and you'll be able to absorb a bigger impact and hold this position for longer. What usually happens is people are weak in this position if they haven't trained it very much, meaning that they then tend to drift into more of a squat posture where they bring their hips forward and underneath their torso more, and then that's when the real fatigue can start on the quads, because then you're not really dissipating any of the energy with the strong muscles in your hips. Your quads are taking all of it. So what I'm also going to drop in here is a demonstration of something called a B stance Romanian deadlift. It's a fantastic exercise because it's done with a staggered stance, which does somewhat replicate our position on the pedals, and it also means that we can identify any strength differences between either side of our hips, our glutes and our hamstrings. Okay, so I'm just going to put a silent demonstration of this movement, but if you want an audio commentary to go with it, I will leave a link to that video below. Needless to say, what this does is it makes you stronger in what we call a hip hinge position, which again means that you're going to be able to hold a stronger position for longer on the bike. So there's two movements there. Spanish squat done with an isodynamic contrast, and the B stance Romanian deadlift, which can just be performed with a little bit of additional load in the form of dumbbells or a barbell, and is best done, I would say, reps of 5 to 10 for 3 sets. Start gently with this one. You can get very sore hamstrings from this one, especially if you are not used to it. All right, Andy, I hope that answers your question about leg fatigue. Okay. So next question comes from Jan, who is saying that he's had a little bit of time off the bike due to some illness, and he's kind of wanting to perform some basic leg strength exercises. He's feeling like his knees are a little bit weak at times. I understand, Jan, I have that effect on people. And so he wants to strengthen up the muscles around his knees. Now, I should probably say that not a physiotherapist. If you are experiencing any actual joint pain or joint issues, I do recommend that you go and get that checked out by a properly qualified and preferably highly regarded physiotherapist who can give you the full analysis of what might be going with your knees and treat accordingly. If, however, you're just feeling that your legs aren't strong and you want to strengthen the muscles up around them, then I can definitely help you out with that. So Jan is wanting to train at home, so this is where I wanted to introduce you to the Bulgarian split squat. It is an exercise that can be done with nothing more than a couch or a dining room chair, as long as you've got something that you can prop a foot on, and if you're new to this, you may want a broom handle to hand as well. So this exercise is a fantastic single leg strength exercise. Single leg is great because, again, it can identify strength differences between our limbs, which probably going to exist. We almost certainly will all have one leg stronger than the other. It will not necessarily be the same side as your dominant hand. For instance, I am right-handed, but my left leg is stronger in the barbell Bulgarian split squat. If I was going to kick a ball, it's my left leg that I would plant on the ground because it is the stronger leg. It is just not as coordinated. So now we've got that out of the way. Barbell Bulgarian split squat or dumbbell Bulgarian split squat, or just done with body weight, is a fantastic single leg strength exercise. If I could pick one kind of squat pattern movement to do for the rest of my days, fortunately I don't have to do that, but I would pick the Bulgarian split squat. So again, what I'm going to suggest is you start off with the easiest version of this exercise. So you can see I'm supporting myself here with a PVC pipe, a broom handle or something like that would work just fine. And you're going to work up to doing 3 sets of 10 over time. You may have to start by doing something like 2 sets of 5. Okay, working one leg, having a little rest, working the other leg. And then over time, try and work up to doing 3 sets of 10 with the assistance. Okay, if you find that too easy, then you can ditch the assistance of the broom handle and you can do what I'm doing here, which is the full body weight version. And again, full range of motion, slow and controlled on the descent, and then standing back up, good posture, full hip extension, legs fully extended. And again, 3 sets of 10 with that. If you can get to the stage of doing that with good technique, then your quads will certainly not be able to be called weak anymore. You may find that you want to add a little bit of extra load if you've got a dumbbell or a kettlebell or heck, even a suitcase to hand, anything that you can use to load your body, put on a rucksack filled with some heavy stuff, anything that you can use to add additional load as well. If you want to do that and you're training at home, you don't want to have to go to the gym. Okay, I hope that that answers your question, Jan. I think that's a fantastic exercise to be working on. So please do give it a go and let me know how you get on with it. It will make a huge difference to your pedal stroke and your power output, and also you will grow muscle around your knee if you're not used to this exercise. It's a fantastic builder of strength and muscle. Okay, final question comes from David, and he was asking about training to failure. Is it something that's a good idea? Do we have to train to failure to make progress? So let's jump straight on in with this one. So first of all, we need to define what we mean by training to failure. So if we're talking about performing strength exercises, then let's say you have to perform a set of 10 of a given exercise, like, I don't know, bench press, and you are getting to your 8th rep and you have to take a little bit of a rest at the top of your 8th rep, maybe for 5 seconds or something like that, because you know that if you were to keep on going after that 8th rep, you wouldn't get the 9th without taking that little rest. I'm going to stop talking. I'm talking nonsense. Let's try again. One more clap. Okay, David had a question about training to failure. So, should we train to failure? Is it necessary for us to train to failure to make progress? Is it ever a good idea? Okay, so I'm going to try and deal with this one. So first of all, we need to define what we mean by training to failure. Training to failure, and I like to define it as technical failure, not complete muscular failure, is where you can no longer perform any repetitions of a given weight training movement with good technique. So either technique would have to break down for you to get another repetition, you have reached failure. Or you would have to maybe take a little rest of 5 seconds or something like that before you can perform another repetition. You really did just reach failure. Or you literally fail midway through a lift. In some exercises, this is no big deal. Like you're doing a pull-up and you just can't get to the top of the pull-up, no big deal. However, if you're doing a bench press and you can't get the bench up very high, then you might have to lower that thing onto your chest and like roll it over your hips. It's very unpleasant. Ditto, back squat, ditching a back squat off your back, always a bit scary. Okay, so now we've defined what we mean by failure. First of all, we need to understand that every repetition that you perform during a set is going to deliver more results, provided that is performed with good technique and the weight is sufficiently heavy to challenge you. So let's say, for instance, I am doing back squat with my 10 rep max loaded on the bar. That is a weight that I know that I can lift for 10 reps and no more. Maybe in previous weeks, I literally maxed out on that lift and set a new PR. And it was like, woohoo, I can now do X amount of weight for 10 reps and no more. You're already probably thinking, you must have gone pretty close to failure then. Yeah, probably did. We'll get to that in a moment. And so the smart thing for me to do now would for me to take that weight and do multiple sets where I'm keeping a couple of reps in reserve. So this is where I want to introduce the idea of reps in reserve, or RPE, rating of perceived exertion. So it's probably most productive for me to do sets of like 7, 8, maybe 9 with that new 10 rep max and be able to do multiple good quality sets, let's say a set of like an 8, an 8 and then a 7, rather than me immediately going in, well, I know I can lift this for 10 reps, doing a set of 10, because then what I know will happen is that the next set, even if I take a good few minutes rest, it's going to be like a set of 6, and the set after that is going to be a set of 3. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to get less work done, and I'm going to end up receiving less of a muscular stimulus, less of a growth stimulus and less of a strength stimulus. So it's more productive to keep a couple of reps in reserve and be able to get more of a stimulus, because we know that every rep we perform with a given load is going to lead to more progress, more strength gains, and more hypertrophy, muscle building, if that's your goal. But that follows a linear pattern, but fatigue seems to ramp up exponentially the closer we get to failure. So a set with 8 of my 10 rep max is really hard. It will be very, very tough. This is not an easy set. A set of 10 will be so fatiguing that I might not really feel recovered from that for several days. I might not be able to do another set like that for the best part of a week. Whereas if I keep a couple of reps in reserve on those sets, I'll probably be recovered in 2 or 3 days, and I'll be able to go in and get another growth stimulus or strength stimulus in another few days. Okay, so consistency over intensity. Now, should you never ever go to failure? Well, let's say again, I'm going in doing sets of 8 with what I think is an RPE of 8 out of 10 or 2 reps in reserve. Then I go into the gym the following week and I think, okay, I've got a rest week coming up soon after this. I'm going to see what I can do with this weight. And I get like a set of 15. It turns out I wasn't training at 2 reps in reserve. I was training at like 7 reps in reserve, and I was actually holding back too much. So sometimes it can be a good idea to go all the way to pretty close to failure, sort of 0 reps in reserve. Sometimes, if you're an experienced lifter and your technique is rock solid, because you might need to calibrate your reps in reserve ratings or your RPE ratings to make sure you know that you're still kind of in the right ballpark with your training. So is failure necessary? Absolutely not. It causes a boatload of fatigue, which isn't always matched by the returns that you get back with it. However, if you know that you've got some rest and recovery coming up, then failure training can occasionally help you calibrate your effort levels in the gym. But I really think it should be the exception and far from the rule. Something like 2 or 3 reps in reserve, an RPE of like 7 or 8 out of 10 in your strength training exercises is more than adequate. Okay, right. Those were some awesome questions. Thank you so much for firing those over. I really appreciate it. Again, if you've got questions for future episodes, wait for me to put out the announcement saying I would like some questions please, and then get them asked. It takes me about a week to get round to preparing answers and then filming the video, editing the video and re-uploading it. Thank you for your patience with this one. If you're seeing this video and you are not a member of the Facebook for Mountain Bikers group, then please do find us on Facebook. Facebook for Mountain Bikers, Fitness for Mountain Bikers group. Find us on Facebook and yeah, just ask to join, and if you're not a bot, I will let you join. And if you're not aware of my website, www.endlesstrailfitness.co.uk, evidence-based training and nutrition information for mountain bikers who want to get the most out of their precious riding time. There's loads of free articles on there. You can also drop me a line if you want to ask me anything really specific, and I also sell programs there. So if you go to the products page, then yeah, click on there and you'll see that I sell programs to suit different mountain biking goals. Finally, I have a newsletter that I send out each month, so if you don't want to miss that, again, go to the newsletter link or hit subscribe on my website, www.endlesstrailfitness.co.uk. Give that a click and you will not be spammed by me. You just receive 1 email a month full of amazing information. Right, folks, thanks very much for listening to me drone on, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. Cheers!